Just waiting for people to come back. I know I have been out of the loop for a while, but welcome to my podcast. My name is Pamela. I am your host. We're just going to sit here and we're going to talk about things that are really important. I don't sugarcoat nothing. I tell it like it is. I don't monetize my videos. I do it because it's the right thing to do. In terms of politics, most definitely, yes. Because we saw what happened when Donald Trump was in office, right? We saw carnage and destruction everywhere he went. And his building of the wall fell like toothpicks, from what I heard. And his MAGA supporters are the most demonstrative people that I have ever seen in my life. In fact, that's what we're going to start with this day. I pulled up 2 articles about Gus Waltz, the son of one of the co-runners for the presidency in 2025. He was at the DNC convention with his daughter, with his father. He had his sister and mother there with him. And his son was so proud of his dad that he stood up crying and pointing and looking around and saying, "That's my dad. That's my dad." Because he said, the father said to his kids and family, "You are my world and I love you." And Gus Waltz has many disabilities, ADHD being one of them, anxiety disorder being another, and one other disability. Well, members of the MAGA community have made fun of this young man for just showing love and respect to his father. Somebody said, "Geez, give him a tampon already. Give him a towel." And they call him an alpha male. They think he's too feminine. But yet they say nothing when Kyle Rittenhouse sat bawling his eyes out in court because he shot and killed 2 people. Whether it was an accident, I don't know. But people don't like Kyle Rittenhouse. They have every right not to like him. I heard he got banned from attending something. People do not like this kid. They don't bastardize Kyle Rittenhouse for crying because, if I remember right, he's also a man. He sat and cried in the courtroom. Tim Waltz's kid, Gus, is 17 years old, has multiple disabilities, cried and showed appreciation for his dad, because I think that young man knows what's at stake for this country. He knows if we get another 4 years of Donald Trump, we are going to be in purgatory hell. That's just the way of it. Think back to January 6th. Do you guys ever think about anything? January 6th, Donald Trump sat back and did nothing, while Nancy Pelosi and others were running to safety because the MAGA freaks broke into the rotunda, tore the place up, and were wanting to put a bullet in Nancy Pelosi's head. Remember that. And now media is fearing, and members of probably Congress itself are probably fearing for another January 6th. Can't say I blame them. Remember, Brian Sicknick got killed. Many other people got injured that day at the rotunda. And let's not forget, Donald Trump promised pardons to those who took part in January 6th. Some of them sat in jail. Some of them are serving time. Some of them have even committed suicide. Yeah, we don't want another 4 years of that. We don't want another 4 years of that shit. And MAGA, the assholes that made fun of a young man who showed great admiration and respect for his father, all because he cried. Yet they don't want to bastardize Kyle Rittenhouse too? Oh, you're being a pussy. Go to court. Keep that stiff upper lip, huh? You can't have one without the other. I'm sorry. But how dare you pick on a young man who has a couple of disabilities? Saying, if this is the future of our country, we are in big trouble, the MAGA freaks say. Well, you know what? If we follow your example, Mr. MAGA Republicans, you can kiss my big ass on Hollywood and Vine. Because whether you like it or not, we are the outsiders to this country. The Indians were here first. The Pilgrims were the first to come into this country, to settle here for a better life away from England and their high taxes. You know, the Indians were here first. The white man and others come over from England. We are the foreigners. We are the illegal aliens, if you want to think of it that way. But to bastardize a young man because he showed admiration for his father, and you want to downplay Kamala Harris because of her race, then you're not right in your head. You have no right to be in public office. Because things like the history books have taught us that we are the great American melting pot. There are Italian, Chinese, Jewish, African American, albinos, white, black, red, brown, purple, yellow, all run this country together. And we can't have one without the other, you know? We need each other as a humanity, not just as a country, but the planet needs each other in order to survive. But when I hear about people who make fun of Gus Waltz for being emotional at the DNC, you know, Waltz, who formerly accepted the vice presidential nominee at the party's convention in Chicago that night, he's been open with his son, Gus, who has a nonverbal learning disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. During his father's acceptance speech, Gus was seen crying and cheering for his father from the crowd, standing alongside his wife, Gwen, and their 23-year-old daughter, Hope. And he told them, he says, "You are my world, and I love you." And people were making fun of this kid. You know, and let's see. It says here, they're saying, here, let me go back up here to the top. MAGA affiliated accounts on social media have mocked Tim Waltz's 17-year-old son, Gus, for crying during his father's speech at the Democratic National Convention on Wednesday. Gus Waltz, who has ADHD along with a nonverbal learning disorder and an anxiety disorder, was there with his mom and sister during the DNC as their father gave them a shout out before the roaring crowd. He said, Hope, Gus, and Gwen, you are my entire world, and I love you. You know, and people were saying, look at this kid crying and pointing to the stage and saying, that's my dad. You know, and a couple of these idiots posted the following caption: Betamaxing, and it was known as a slang term, a rather derogatory term in my mind, for so-called feminine qualities being present in a guy. Maxing is a suffix used to describe maximizing a specific trait as it looks maxing or status maxing. When a version of the video was posted by a political commentator, garnering more than 1 million views, prominent MAGA influencer Colin Rugg replied, "Bro," with one of them replying back, "We can't talk about Rittenhouse anymore," who actually had his life on the line in the courtroom. This was in references to when Kyle Rittenhouse cried while giving his testimony during his murder trial. He was later acquitted on all charges of the killing of 2 people in Kenosha, Wisconsin. You know, and the pro-Trump account Autism Capital posted a image of Gus Waltz crying. Poor kid. It was a heartfelt moment. And he's definitely becoming, Autism Capital pointed it out. Poor kid. It was a heartfelt moment for him, but he's definitely going to become a meme. Garnering over 256,000 views. It later posted another image of the 17-year-old crying with the caption, "When you find the one working McDonald's ice cream machines in your city." And somebody from Menswear wrote about mocking a neurodivergent person. What goes through your head when you bait your audience to make jokes about people with ALS and kids? The reply was liked about 20,000 times. Autism Capital's original post was liked 1,200 times. Autism Capital has previously posted a clip of a person with ALS speaking at the DNC. In other words, don't mock the afflicted, because what's going on with them is not their fault. Oh, I remember the lady that got hit by a bus and fire truck 2 years ago was racist. Yeah, just like I said, people who talk smack, they get what's coming back to them tenfold. And some Republicans, I was going to talk about that. Let's see if I have it here. Okay. I had to find it because they're both under Newsweek. You could look it up on the internet. Gus Waltz being mocked. You could look it up. I don't know if I'm going to post those articles or not, because I don't want to have too many windows open on my computer. It's old. But, there may be a sign of hope for the Republicans, because this was published back in August. I know I've been offline for a while. I had to take care of my own mental health and take care of bills around here. But this was back in August 22nd of this year. Republicans defend Tim Walz's son after MAGA attacks. A handful of Republicans have spoken out in defense of Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. A 17-year-old son on social media was mocked by several MAGA accounts online after getting emotional over his father's speech at the DNC. Walz, who formerly accepted the Democratic national presidential nomination at the party's convention in Chicago on Wednesday night, has been open about his son Gus and his disabilities. During his father's acceptance speech, Gus was seen crying and cheering his father from the crowd, standing alongside his wife and a 23-year-old daughter. Early into the speech, the governor gave his family members a shout-out from the podium. Cameras showed Gus crying and gesturing toward the stage as appeared to say, "That's my dad." The moment which many users on social platforms like X, formerly Twitter, praised as heartwarming, was criticized by users who aligned themselves with former President Donald Trump's Make America Great Again movement. One user wrote in a post on that Thursday that Gus Waltz was a beta. Another one said Wednesday, give that kid a tampon already. And yeah, those posts were since removed from X because they couldn't bear to face the blowback. But conservative podcaster Ben Shapiro, who is a supporter of Trump, said in a post to X on Thursday that Gus Waltz's reaction is really quite nice. Meghan McCain, daughter of the late Senator John McCain, also criticized any accounts that were attacking Gus. I honestly can't believe there is a conversation about Governor Waltz's family, said McCain on that Thursday afternoon. Conventions are very intense experiences, and outward displays of love should be celebrated. Any Republican saying otherwise is just helping destroy more of the GOP's cred and aiding a Trump loss. And she's right. Conservative media personality Matt Walsh also defended against any right-wingers who were bashing Gus Waltz's reaction. Attacking a kid for loving his dad is the dumbest move I've seen by right wings on this site in a while. Walsh wrote to X, literally no benefit at all. Some people on our side have no ability to think strategically. Frustrating. Newsweek has reached out to Waltz's office for comment. Waltz's speech on that Wednesday night gave the relatively unknown Minnesota Democrat a chance to introduce himself to voters nationwide. The former high school teacher and congressman leaned heavily into his experiences in the public school system, including making several references to his days as a high school football coach. Remember, this guy came from a high school, believe it or not. He went from a coach to being a member of our government. That's pretty damn fine. It's the fourth quarter and we're down a field goal with no offense and we've got the ball, Waltz says as he wrapped up his speech. We're driving down the field and boy, do we have the right team. You know, and it goes on. You know, and I understand where Gus is coming from. In reality, I understand where Gus Waltz is coming from. As a person with disabilities, myself, I've been made to feel like I don't count, like I don't matter, like I'm not a part of the vital cog that keeps the world running. In reality, yeah, I am part of this vital cog that they call the world to keep it running. I might not mean much to most of general society, but I am a person, goddammit, and I'm here to speak out for people like Gus Waltz that might not have the capability to talk about it. Often people with disabilities, whether mental or physical, are made to feel like furniture. Oh yeah, you could see them, but don't listen to them. You know, we should be seen and not heard. Think about it. Or they don't think about anything. They mock a person with a disability before. Remember Trump mocking that disabled reporter? Are you kidding me? Yet they want to bitch about Gus Waltz crying at a DNC. Well, I think you should call Kyle Rittenhouse a beta male. You do the crime, you do the time. You go to court, you stand there and you take it like a man, remember? Don't give me that shit. Don't give me that fucking shit. The MAGA freaks remove their posts because they're afraid of the blowback. Because they know they're in the wrong. They just don't want to admit their fault. And if you talk smack Maybe you should read the comment in the discussion here. Somebody said, I remember that girl got hit by a bus or fire truck 2 years ago. That was racist. I remember your video on that topic. Yep. You talk smack about somebody, you should get denounced. You should get denounced. And somebody said to pick on a kid who shows love for his dad. He said, he even admitted, he says, I'm not one of those touchy-feely guys that goes, ooh. But to make fun of a kid just showing love for his dad, fuck you, is what he said. And there's a coldness about the MAGA Republicans. And those that still have a heart, maybe you should move as an independent or a Democrat. Because we need to make a change. We need to go to a positive trajectory. It's not just about immigration. We're talking about women's rights. We're talking about disability rights. Kamala and Waltz know exactly what's at stake here. We're talking about our democracy as a whole. It's not going to just affect the Democrats. It's going to affect the Republicans and independents as well. But for those that stood up for Gus Waltz, I want to thank you. Even though he might not be able to do it himself. I want to thank you personally for helping Gus Waltz survive. The autism channel that spoke out about Gus, poor kid, it's an emotional moment for him. Seeing his father go from a football coach to a public official in one night, and he's going to become a meme. Mostly for the bad, is what they're saying. Mostly for the bad. It's like a lot of people who picked on Christopher Reeve. For those that remember, when Christopher Reeve had his accident in 1995, a lot of people didn't think he would survive. But yet, if I know Chris from the roles he's played, strong men, he's done a lot of stage work, like stage-like films. The Bostonians, The Remains of the Day, Somewhere in Time. Are they going to bastardize Christopher Reeve for crying in Somewhere in Time over Elise McKenna? If you don't have all facets of your emotions, then you're not human. My dad cried when he heard Patsy Cline. My dad cried when he lost his parents. He was never the same after he lost his parents. So, don't go there. Don't go pissing on somebody's son because he cried and pointed to everybody in the crowd. He's like, give it up for my dad. I'm proud of my dad. And to have the MAGA bastards make fun of Gus Waltz, that shows where their heart is at, because they follow the example of Donald John Trump. I know one time he made fun of a disabled reporter. And even Joe Cocker moved like that when he sang. Remember? He would move his arms. And even one of the Blues Brothers did, one that did the Blues Brothers, I think it was John Belushi, did a Joe Cocker impersonation. Most people would call that insensitive today. But when you're using it to forward your own sick agenda, to get your butt back into the White House, to make fun of somebody's kid, and say, give the kid a tampon already. Oh, he's a beta male. Where was all that when Elliot Rodger was acting like somebody should kneel down and suck his tiny wee-wee, huh? Where was that? In other words, shut up. Donald Trump will never be anything. He's just a follower. He was a follower of his father. He's a follower of Vladimir Putin. He doesn't care about us. He doesn't care about you. When are you going to get off your rocks and actually do the right thing? Me, I'm voting for Kamala. I'm sure her wall that she'll help build will be far better than what Trump built. And what Trump did manage to get up out there on the border of America and Mexico, I'm sure her wall will be a lot stronger, because what I heard of Donald Trump's wall, parts of it have already fallen down. And let's see, immigration problems have been going on since the start of this country. I'm being honest here. And if you're willing to put your devotion into one man, if he loses the election and we have another January 6th, that's on you. I know my brother is a Trump follower. I know my brother-in-law is a Trump follower, but they weren't stupid enough to drop everything they had to go to the Capitol and ruin their lives. And let's not forget, Trump did promise to pardon those that went to jail. But he didn't. He left them sitting in jail. Some of them are serving time. Some of them committed suicide, leaving many of the security people there broken and disillusioned by what happened. Is this what America, they're thinking, is this what America is going to be? Because of one man? Are you kidding me? And I'm sad because MAGA people are grown ass adult men, women, and transgender, I'm sure. They're full grown people acting like a bunch of bullies at a schoolyard. Oh, look at this sucker. He's crying. He's a pussy. He's a wimp. No. You're just a mindless machine that nobody can relate to. I think of that scene in The Breakfast Club where Andrew Clark bears his soul to the princess in the basket case and the criminal. And the smart one. He says, I thought about my dad's attitude on weakness. And he was talking about Larry Lester, one of the wrestlers, going in and getting ready for a match. And he was in the locker room, taping up his knee. Larry Lester comes in, and he thought, hey, I'm going to try and one-up my father. I've always heard about all the things he used to do in school. He got on top of this kid, wailed on him, and taped his buns together. And he says when they took the tape off, some skin and hair came off. And he sat there in Vernon's office thinking about the humiliation Larry must have felt in having to go home and explain what happened to him. And he goes on to say the fucking humiliation he must have felt. How do you apologize for something like that? The thing is, when you wail on somebody, you make fun of them, you can't apologize for that. Once you say it, it's out there. Once you do it, it's out there. There's such thing as screen capture. People can screen capture your shit and say, oh, you can't hide the fact that you said what you said. You posted this on X. You posted that on X. You posted that on your Telegram or whatever the fuck you're on. You're not going to be able to hide those words. It's forever. But then the so-called right-wing Republicans that don't think with their brain don't have the capability to. They're too stupid to see, gee, I shouldn't be doing that because that could be my kid. That could be my son. That could be my daughter. That could be my cousin. That could be my mother. But to hear about Tim Waltz, having his son made fun of. Not funny. I was made fun of by a bunch of dumbass teenagers and said, oh, she holds her fork funny, or her legs are awful bent. You know, this was at a restaurant I went to. I know some of my viewers have heard this story. Went to Myrtle Beach, usually a nice place to go. My parents loved it there, and their spirits are there. I believe that. But we went to Western Steer one night. Usually have good steaks. And we sit down at the table, we order our meals, and we get them. And these kids were making snide comments. Me being probably 12 at the time, didn't realize that they were making fun of me until my father got up. Members of my family got up to talk to them, but they just wouldn't stop. Finally, the manager comes out and said, is there a problem here? And I'm like, sitting there. I pushed my food away. And they said, yeah, we got some kids here making fun of my daughter. We came here to have dinner, not to have my daughter made fun of. And the manager says, well, I'm sorry, we'll cover your dinner. And he says, well, forget it. We're not taking any food. We're leaving. And my brother, my twin brother, who I thought didn't care a thing about me, he says, if you were in my state of Ohio, I would kick your ass. And I go walking across the lot and I'm crying my eyes out. And I said to my dad, I said, can the world really be this cruel? And my dad put his arm around me and he says, yeah, honey, sometimes it is. And when they saw that I was crying, they then tried to apologize. That's when my brother said, if you were in my state of Ohio, I would whip your ass. And that was the first time I realized that my twin brother did love me, because I think he was kind of upset that I was the special needs child. But he was starting to grow up and realize, hey, what happened to her was not necessarily her fault. So, yeah. Don't mock the afflicted. Learn that lesson, people. Don't mock the afflicted. Don't take Trump's example. Because Trump has no heart, he has no soul, he has no dignity, he has no balls to be a man. Hey, you shouldn't make fun of somebody's kid. What happened to them isn't their fault. It's just like if a soldier went over to war with all his faculties intact, he came back with legs missing, a mental condition, and people make fun of them. You have a hole in your heart when you do shit like that. And it's like, I'm sure you all remember when Christopher Reeve had his accident, right? The world came together to offer him support and sent him letters. I even got one back from Chris years ago. I don't know if I still have it because my basement flooded. I had a letter from his mother, Dorothy Lamb Crawford, in my closet in a little keepsake box. And she said, you're very brave yourself. I told her about me. I told him about me, about what I have to deal with and what he may have to deal with. I was honest with him. And she goes, well, you're very brave yourself, young lady. I'm sorry I can't write more. We got other letters for Chris to read and get notices out to some people. I was one of the lucky ones to get a letter from him. One from his mother and one from the desk of Christopher Reeve. I remember that. That's what it said on his letterhead. From the desk of Christopher Reeve. Yeah, I remember that. People rallied around Chris, and some people had made fun of him. Some people using pictures of him in his wheelchair. It cut out parts of him to make him look like he fell out of his wheelchair as part of their own sick, twisted fantasies, as I've said before. Yeah, you better hope you don't have a child with a disability, or you better hope you don't end up with a broken neck and that you're in a wheelchair. Some people can do everyday things like play soccer. They can go into a tackle and break their neck. I heard about one guy that lived 2 years as a paraplegic and died. The story is up here on YouTube. I'll have to find that and share that below, or I'll share that as a featured video on my main page. But don't ever mock the afflicted. Gus Waltz is extremely happy and proud for his father, who went from a coach at a school to probably one of the highest ranking offices in the world, being a vice president. Come on. He knows what's at stake for this country, and we cannot follow Trump's example. We just can't. Now that I got that stuff out of the way, I want to talk about a couple of the biggest losses in Hollywood. One was Chris Christopherson. People know him from the film Convoy. People know him from A Star is Born. That's how I know him. But I also know him from appearing in the film Free to Be You and Me. It talks about growing up and hitting puberty. It had Marlo Thomas, a young Michael Jackson, Roberta Flack, Alan Alda. It teaches you all about the basics of life, and growing up and hitting puberty. They even had Rosie Greer, the football player, take part in that. If you can find it, give it a watch. Chris Christopherson appeared in one of the singing segments on the show. Let's see. Chris Christopherson passed away. I think he was in his late 80s. And people know him from the group The Highwaymen. I wasn't a big fan of Chris Christopherson, but I do know him from Convoy and A Star is Born. That's about all I know. But he passed away. And John Ashton, a.k.a. John Taggart, the no-nonsense police officer that had a run-in with Foley the first time they met. And Taggart's line was, "We had 6 witnesses that say you broke in, started tearing up the place, then jumped out the window." And Axel's response was, "And you guys believe that, right? What the fuck are you, cops or doormen?" And he says, "We're more than likely to believe an important local businessman than a foul-mouthed jerk from out of town." And he says, "Fuck you, man." He says, "You watch your mouth. Hey, don't square off on me with some bullshit. You want to start some static?" And he pushes Taggart, and Taggart pushes him back, but he punches him too. So, yeah, that was their first meeting. But John Ashton has had a long career. His first film was Oh God, the vehicle for John Denver, a grocery guy who had a hard time believing that God was in the car next to him, in the gremlin next to him. So he makes it rain inside the car. And John Ashton's character was the one that stopped the car as it was leaking water. And John Ashton's final film role, as far as I know, is Beverly Hills Cop 4. Now, Hollywood has been hit hard. John Ashton died of cancer. And I think a soap star recently died from cancer. So, yeah, never, ever, ever take a day for granted. Rest in peace, John Ashton. I grew up watching those cop movies quite a bit. The first film came out when I was 13 years old. It was one of the first films we rented. And it was great seeing Billy Rosewood, John Taggart, and Axel Foley grow and meld as characters. And you learn to root for them. And by the last movie that they did together, Beverly Hills Cop 4, I had a sense that it would be like the last go around for at least one of them. And I know John Ashton didn't look well. He looked really skinny. He just didn't look well. And even though it was great seeing the originals back together, not just Rosewood, Taggart, and Axel, but we saw Jeffrey and we saw Serge from the art gallery slash weapons boutique. You know, they're all older, a little grayer. Axel has a daughter in the final outing. And I guess it came full circle in some aspects because we got Jeffrey wanting to jump ship as the chief of the Detroit Police Department. And we have Taggart trying to stay out of the house away from Maureen. But in the final film, he's more of a gruff character than a guy that's willing to go out and look for Billy, who is missing in this action-packed thriller. They don't find him until toward the end of the film. So, yeah. It could have went out with a bang, but for me it kind of went out with a whimper because the snappiness wasn't there, you know. Axel always had a one-liner here, a one-liner there. But in the final film, they tried to capitalize on the first two films, Beverly Hills Cop 1 and Beverly Hills Cop 2. They used the song from the original Axel F in the beginning, then Shakedown, and they had Axel back in the blue Chevy Nova. But there's no sign of a Jeanette Summers. She was just kind of like a throwaway character. But that's the only thing. No Jeanette Summers. We see Serge and Jeffrey, you know, and they're all older. One of them's getting ready to jump ship. Taggart gets angry with Axel and tells him to leave the office or he was going to be arrested. But, you know, you just had this feeling that it was coming down to the end in terms of the original trio. Because let's face it, Beverly Hills Cop 3 is just a misnomer. Granted, Alan Young, was always great in every part that he did. Whether it was being on Mr. Ed or doing Scrooge McDuck on DuckTales. But he played Uncle Dave eloquently. But there was no Taggart. He was supposed to be retired. But in my guess, he came back because he got tired of being retired and stuck with Maureen. So he's back as chief of the Beverly Hills Police Department. Billy winds up missing, and Axel is out there trying to find him and get to the bottom of what's going on. And he has to reconcile with a daughter that we knew nothing about. So, yeah. But, yeah, Hollywood is being hit hard right now. Not just in terms of streaming wars, but we're talking about the P. Diddy situation. This is what I want to end it on. P. Diddy, I hate to say it, but his career is done. You know, he got away with a lot of shit for a lot of years. He took a lot from the R. Kelly playbook. Do your crime. Nobody will believe these women. You know, we'll get them to sign non-disclosures or some shit. You know, and I hear things like him having weapons with the serial numbers sawed off of them, and public freak-offs with bottles and bottles of baby oil, and a lot of weird shit going on. And they're trying to figure out who is connected to Diddy and who knew what, who knew what, where, when, and how. They're going to get these guys. The entertainment industry is under the microscope for sure. P. Diddy's career is finished. He's going to end up like Harvey Weinstein, or better yet, he'll end up like Jeffrey Epstein, who died under mysterious circumstances. People are saying that P. Diddy, or as Bruce Rivers, criminal lawyer Reacts, had said, the diddler will not survive prison. People are saying P. Diddy won't survive prison. But yet, people can be in jail and they can still do their dirty work from behind bars. And even Suge Knight knows, P. Diddy's fucked. His career is done. I mean, if we could mute R. Kelly for what his crimes entailed, then we could certainly mute P. Diddy, Sean Diddy Combs. And I hear also that Garth Brooks has got some sexual allegations against him. So we'll just have to wait and see how all that shit plays out. Because it's going to be a field day. It's going to be a massive field day. I feel bad for people that have so-called role models today. I grew up when Superman was a thing. Christopher Reeve's Superman. He didn't do no drugs. He didn't do no steroids. He bulked up naturally. He worked hard to get where he was. Today's idols are testosterone-filled, auto-tuned bastards. They'll never know what a good group is. They'll never know what a good group is. They'll never know what a good singer is. Oh, I also want to mention one more thing. There's been some news reports within the last month or so about Frankie Castelluccio, a.k.a. Frankie Valli. The guy who sang Sherry, Can't Take My Eyes Off of You, and had songs like Oh What a Night, December 63, the final hit from the Four Seasons. He's under the microscope for his health, his mental state. And for years, people have been saying he has no right to be out on stage. Not at that age. To me, if you're 90 years old, you still love what you do, then do it. But if you're not willing to actually sing the song, you go out on stage and you mime to a record, what the hell is that? Is that a puppet job? To me, it seems more like a puppet job. And he looks like he has no muscle mass on his face. All you see is his skeleton. You see the skeleton underneath the skin. He looked a lot like Robin Gibb did just before he died. Very skinny, very gaunt. And the only difference between Robin Gibb and Frankie Valli is Robin Gibb had cancer. But we're looking at Frankie Valli, Frankie Castelluccio, 90 years old, out there on stage miming to a record, miming to a pre-recorded track. He looks like he's there, but he's not there, if you know what I mean. He's got that Alzheimer's look. He's got that dementia look. People are saying, he's saying he has spoken out, I guess. He said, I'm going to go out there and do it as long as I can, as long as I'm able to. But people are comparing him to the walking dead. He's a walking corpse. His face is sunken. He looks unhealthy. He looks tired. He looks ragged. And in truth, I think he's still running from his past. You know, Jersey Boys, the movie, made him look like a saint. But he's not. He's made some missteps in his life. He lost one daughter to a car accident. He lost another to a drug overdose. You know, and Nick Massey got out when things got to be too much. You know, Tommy stealing from tax accounts, not paying hotel bills, not holding up his end of the deal, and just being a total scumbag, not caring about the group. And whoever was around Frankie at that time tried to warn him. You know, Tommy DeVito didn't give a damn about the group. You know, and you dug that hole for yourself, Frankie. You took on his debts. Nick Massey didn't want to. He just said, I'm leaving. I got to get back to my family. I need my family. And I could understand. I could understand that totally. And the scene that clinches it for me in the film was where they go to Gyp DeCarlo's house to confront Tommy about stealing from the tax account or taking money from other people to pay, you know, taking money from Peter to pay Paul and not holding up his end of the responsibilities of being a manager. You know, and Nick Massey, you know, they all go there to Gyp DeCarlo's house. They have a little wine and they get into the business of the meeting and why they are there. You know, and he probably hooked up with some people that wanted to break his leg as if he didn't pay back the money he had borrowed from these loan sharks. I have no doubt that happened. But Nick Massey is so fed up and frustrated that he says, I got to say something. He says, I got to say something. And he says, about Tommy, he says, the man is a personal nightmare. He takes no pride in his appearance. He wears the same underwear 3 days running. And he uses up all the bath towels. We're talking about the bath mat, the washcloths, the bath towels, the bath mat. He says he came back to the room one time and finds him peeing in the sink. And Tommy says, I never pissed in the sink. And he says, the man is not properly socialized. He says, Frankie doesn't have to deal with it. Gaudio doesn't have to deal with it. I've had to deal with it 10 years. And then Frankie offers to take up Tommy's debts to pay it off to the loan sharks to save a scrawny guy's neck, only to end up being screwed by him again years later in some type of copyright infringement lawsuit with the Jersey Boys. So, yeah. But he's running from his past. I believe he is running from his past. It's not just people making him go out there and do it. He's running from his past. Has Frankie Valli ever really been at home? I don't think so. You know, his daughter died under tragic circumstances. And having a mother who drank all the time didn't help her situation either. There's another scene in Jersey Boys where Frankie comes home and his wife's blitzed out of her mind. And she knows that Frankie's probably done things on the road that he didn't want to admit to. She takes off the marital ring and throws it at him. And she said to him at one point, she says, you think being home a few days makes you a father? And she's right. You know, you have to find a balance between being a performer and being a father. But if I had to help somebody, I would rather help my own kid than help a Marmaluke bum like Tommy who could give two craps about the group. And I think Frankie is dealing with that, and he's dealing with what happened to two of his kids. It's not just the one that died of a drug overdose. He had another daughter that died in a car accident. While I'm sorry he lost his daughters, it doesn't excuse the fact that he was hardly ever there. And just when he pays off the loan shark or pays off the debts to Tommy, his daughter dies in 1980 at the young age of 30. So, yeah, I feel bad for Francine because she should have the career that she wanted. She could have had the life that she wanted, but it was all taken away due to her dependence on drugs. She was unhappy, miserable, and she needed the care of her father. And having a mother that had a drinking problem didn't help her matters any. So, yeah. And people are talking about Frankie Valli today. Many videos have gone viral stating that he looks like a walking corpse, saying he looks like the lights are on but nobody's home. He's got that Alzheimer's or dementia stare. And the people behind him, the people that do the dancing and the singing, do more moving than Frankie does. Granted, the guy's 90 years old, but he looks like death is coming for him. That's what it looks like. It looks like the Grim Reaper's coming for him. He's skinny. He looks very emaciated. He looks very tired. And it's time for him to get off the road. It's one thing to go to a concert and see a performer go out there and belt their songs out like there's no tomorrow. But if you're using backing tracks more and more to compensate for singing, then it's time to hang it up. You know, I would hate to see it if he were to fall on stage because, he's older. He could break bones. And it looks like a freak show. I think back to when Glenn Campbell had his goodbye tour. Check out the film I'll Be Me and look up any footage that you could find on the final concert of Glenn Campbell. By the end of that goodbye tour, he couldn't use the prompter anymore. He was complaining about his instruments not being turned up. But I think people that worked behind the scenes knew that Glenn Campbell should not be on that stage. And he should be home. He should be at home in the loving care of his family, living out his days until his body gives out. But I see it, the final tour, toward the end, it became more like a freak show. But people were supportive of Glenn, but I see it as a money-making grab. And the saddest thing is, he had most of his kids on that tour, all but the oldest daughter, Debbie, who used to sing Little Green Apples with her father on stage. Check out the PBS concert of Glenn Campbell, where they had, toward the end of the concert, his daughter came out and sang Little Green Apples with her father. She was notably absent from the tour. For some reason, she was fired from the tour. But those last shows showed him in the worst state of decline that I've ever seen a person with Alzheimer's actually have. It's sad. It really is. And I heard he had to go into a special care facility after socking Kim. he punched her. So he wound up going into a special care facility where he would mostly sleep during the day. So, yeah. He couldn't play anymore. He couldn't sing anymore, but he still went out on stage and tried to do a show. But to me, it was a freak show. I found one video a long time ago and I cried through what they could get out of him. It was just sad. I would be like, take the guy home. Let him enjoy his last days. It just seemed more like it was for a publicity stunt toward the end than actually him wanting to do it. And as his buddy Jimmy Webb said, if he knew the full ramifications of what Alzheimer's was really doing to him, would he still consider it a part of God's plan? I don't think so. And it's even happening with Bruce Willis. He started using like little prompters, like little things in his ear to help him remember his lines. Now he's in aphasia/dementia. So, yeah. That's what I mean by the industry as a whole is being hit hard right now. It's not just the Diddy situation. We're talking about good old-time actors passing away. And now with Bruce Willis facing dementia, and we lost Helen Reddy some years ago to dementia. So, yeah. Don't ever take a day for granted. So as I close this podcast out, I know it's over an hour. I want to hear your thoughts about the Tim Waltz debacle, the mockery of Gus Waltz. I want to hear how it would make you feel if someone made fun of your child for disabilities. I want to hear how you would feel about what's been going on in the industry in terms of P. Diddy. We could even talk about the current hurricane that's coming up toward Florida. They're calling the hurricane that's hitting up toward Florida probably the 100-year hurricane that's supposed to hit Tampa. But we don't know yet. I got to turn on my TV to turn on YouTube so I could find out. As you can see, I no longer have my cable box. I just have internet and phone. That's all. I don't deal with cable anymore. I'm trying to save money and pay bills and get things cleaned out and get ready for 2025. Can't believe that. Next year, I'll be 54 years old. Another step toward the grave, as they say. But I intend to make the most of my time here on this platform. It might not be as often, but I think for the foreseeable future, I'll go over to my secondary channel. I'll still update here in terms of finding body cams and law and crime type videos. I just have to make sure those playlists are public. So if you see them updated, go to them. I just find the videos and I catalog them. The body cams belong to various channels. They have their names stretched on the screen. I may download one and share it here where you could post your own comments, but I don't want to do that. But I come on here and talk about things that need to be spoken about, whether it's people acting crazy in public, the political problem, the entertainment industry imploding in terms of bad people like P. Diddy or R. Kelly or Bill Cosby. We need to talk about this. We just can't sweep it under the rug anymore. And to those people that died in the industry that left good works, I send sympathies. And those who died too young, you're in a better place. You don't have to deal with the turmoil down here. And I'm telling you, if you have family members that are dealing with cancer, Alzheimer's, ALS, Hold them closer. Support them in any way you can. And denounce anybody who makes fun of people with disabilities. I deal with it every day. I get called lazy-eyed freak, a useless cripple, and all that shit. I'm sure Gus Waltz has a lot of that going on with him too. We've seen it in the news. But Gus is a good kid who's very proud of his father. And as I've said, my father was not a touchy-feely kind of guy, but you put on a movie like Ghost, he'll cry. You put on the Rugrats Mother's Day episode, my father cried at that. And if you put on Patsy Cline, my dad would cry at that. So, yeah. If you don't have all the emotions of happy, sadness, if you don't have all the emotional centers that a person has, whether you're happy, you're sad, you laugh, you cry, if you don't have all that, then you're not human. But here we are, we're in the throes of the last 3 weeks before the election. Vote blue. Vote blue. I'm voting for Kamala. I'm going all the way with Kamala. Because she said she's going to finish building the wall. I believe her. She's grown up in a multi-generational environment. She knows what's at stake. She's a people among the people, She was born a normal person, Trump had everything handed to him. He didn't have the kind of emotional mirroring that people like Kamala or Gus have had, If you don't have the proper emotional mirroring, you're setting yourself up for failure. And let's just say Trump is the biggest failure the world has ever seen. He's just a washed up, fake ass TV reality star. Well, let me know what you think about some of the topics that I've covered here today. I know it's not very good. I know I'm way out of practice in doing this crap. But starting probably in December, I'll probably go over to my secondary channel. I got to rename it. I need to figure out a name. But I think we need to start talking about the future of this country, the future of the entertainment industry. Who do we want as our icons, and who do we want locked behind bars? We need to strengthen our law systems here in this country. A lot of the January 6 people have gotten off light in terms of sentences. People like P. Diddy need to pay for their crimes. People like Donald Trump need to pay for their crimes. People like Rudy Giuliani have started paying for their crimes. Rudy Giuliani lost his license to practice. Mike the Pillow Guy, his empire crashed down pretty hard. I don't care to ever see that guy again. And without cable here, I don't have to worry about that. So, yeah. Have a good day, everybody. I'm going to see if this is a fake call or a spammer. So have a good day, everybody.